G'day, everybody. How's it going out there? Well, the nominees are in, and Ursa Majors is open for voting. It did open a few weeks ago, and I forgot to mention that, and it's open for a few weeks more. But be sure to get it in before, I think it's March 24th it's open to. But be sure to vote as early as you possibly can. But one must note that one of the categories is no longer there, and one of the categories has lost a particular entry because there was a spat. And usually I don't cover interpersonal issues on this channel, but when it does impact and have an impact on the Ursa Major Awards and also the fandom as a whole, and has impacted particular lineups at Vancouver, which happened last weekend. You basically find this situation where I have to talk about it. There's a lot more information to it. There's a lot more back and forth going on, particularly between Vancouver and Klace. But I won't cover that one in any detail because while they had their differences, they kind of settled it. So basically, we're just going to talk about the other aspects of this particular thing. Now, what am I talking about? So, long and the short is that the music category has been withdrawn from the Ursa Majors for this year because of contentions around one Cassidy Civet. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Cassidy Civet, I believe we've talked about her before on this channel, about her being defrocked from Indie FurCon, basically being let go from performing. I don't know if I did a video on it. I know I did an article about it, so I can put a link to the article below when she was let go from Indie FurCon. But at the end of this whole thing, she was also asked not to perform at Vancouver, even though she had panels and items set up to go, because of backlash from behavior that she committed online, and also a fallout with her other roommate in Vancouver. So they are locals. These two musicians are locals to the Vancouver area, and they were actually even roommates, apparently. So if there's one thing I have to say before we get started, please, 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 furries, do not, under any circumstances, move in or get a house or anything like that with your furry business partner. I could tell you I've seen at least 3 or 4 situations of this kind of thing, and every single time, 100% of the time, something happens. Like there's some sort of contention or drama between the content creators, or one of the content creators no longer finds any interest in creating that kind of content, and basically they back out or leave, and basically somebody is left holding the bag. Basically that they're left holding, like having to maintain the whole household or something like that. So be sure that that you really have a backup plan and that you're not overextending yourself, because the future is not infinite, and people's behaviors change over time. And when you live with your colleagues, you can get on each other's nerves, right? If you're coworkers and stuff like that, you can find yourselves, like if you have this contention or something like that, at least you can go home, right, and take time to relax and be yourself around people that you just want to relax and be yourself around, instead of having to worry about work, right, and whether or not you're creating enough content and stuff like that, and causing anxiety amongst each other. So just keep that in mind. I've seen too many furries get burned by the concept of moving in with fellow content creators, and so keep your business, keep business, keep your home personal, right? Try to keep those things separated. That's my advice. That's just my advice. So that being said, let's move on. So basically, what happened? So it all started when Cassidy was sort of trying to gatekeep furry music. She is very well infamous about really wanting a lot of stage time, like really wanting to be on that stage. And stage addiction is a very common issue it is not an uncommon issue in the furry fandom, unfortunately. There's a handful of content creators within the furry fandom who I can assure that they are basically stage addicted. If they are not on the stage, if they don't have a panel, if they don't have a set or anything like that, they have no interest in going to the furry convention. Basically, it's like they want to be the content creator. They want to be the person that people come and see. They're not going to the convention to hang around with friends or do any of that kind of thing. So, at the end of the day, Cassidy is one of those kind of content creators. Like, she likes the stage. She wants the stage, almost to a degree of obsession. And there are other furries in history, as I noted. I can think of one, Mr. Griffin, an even prime numbered Griffin, right? Who also, basically, as soon as he was told not to perform at a convention, he effectively saw it as a ban. So it is something of that thing that there are content creators in the furry fandom who see the furry fandom as a launching point to a larger career that they really wish to have, whether to be as a musician or a comedian. But the furry fandom really is just like the furries don't really care about content creators using them as a launching point all that much. And if that's the only thing you're going to get out of it, you're eventually going to run into kind of problems in the future. And this is where I think we're kind of at right now. But I'm rambling again, so let's move forward. So here is the situation where it kind of started. Klace overheard a Cassidy tweet, which was heard around the internet. And Cassidy was basically trying to fight somebody on the internet about, furry music and gatekeeping that one. And she basically invoked the name of Mark Molino in order to try to defend her argument. And seeing as Mark Molino recently died, it's only been a few weeks since we posted the video about his passing. She basically invoked the forefather, right? She invoked the thing in order to try to strengthen her position, which means that she probably feels that she's in a weak position. Here, Klace notes that Cassidy is, Cassidy's claiming she's not speaking ill of the dead, and is basically. And there's a screenshot of the dishonor to the memory of a key fandom figure by using their death to push her own personal agenda. This isn't certainly in Klace's mind. This isn't speaking positively of the dead. In Cassidy, it's probably she reveres that person, and that's why she's trying to use that person in their argument. And we see this all the time in politics when people invoke, like as I said earlier, invoking the forefathers, like that they believe that their belief is the forefathers' belief, and they try to invoke people who are long past, even though they don't really have any right to do so. They should be speaking for themselves and not on behest of somebody who is long past. So Cassidy's tweet was this: "We are not equals. You want a pass for doing less than the bare minimum, and the people who defend it are just as bad. You cannot get the label of being furry. You cannot get the label of being furry music if you don't have anything furry on it. Mark Molino didn't die so you could spit on what it means to be a furry," right? I'll note that I've listened to some of Cassidy's music, particularly one of the ones that was nominated, and it was called Hullabaloo, and there really wasn't any furry themes in the song itself. Obviously, she uses her persona as sort of a thing on the thing, sort of a character on the cover art and such like that. But most furry artists have done that in some way, shape, or form, even when their content is completely non-verbal, right? Electro music and stuff like that. And obviously to furries, musicians, that can be seen as really gatekeepy. And on top of that, Klace points out that one of the folks that was unfortunately left behind, and was knew Mark Molino very well and was a partner of his for 28 years, basically told Cassidy, don't invoke Mark Molino's name, because he was his partner along with Rodney for 28 years. He was Blue Husky was there when he died. Do not pull him into the arguments. Thank you very much. Right. So basically, and according to that individual, to Husky here, he never received an apology from Cassidy for doing such. And so this sort of thing is where it all started. This is where the contention over Cassidy sort of started to bubble up. And, because Cassidy has been infamous for a little bit of time here, you're going to notice that I'm most of these sources here are pulled from Klace, because Klace kept very good notes and very good timeline management. And on top of that, it's like, well, what about her side of the story? She has a platform. She has a YouTube channel. She's used it to espouse her views before, and I assume that she will do it again when she is very well and ready. But the reality is that there's a concept of patterns, right? There are some people are very angry and frustrated when they talk, and they get really, they will tell you how they feel straight up immediately, even if it's very bombastic and very hard and fast. Other people will be a little bit more laid back, but at some point, right, there's the idea that there are certain patterns here that seem to be repeating themselves over and over again. And, while I believe Cassidy can say, oh, well, these organizations are all conspiring against me, the reason that this one really comes up to a boil is because this is a fellow furry musician who lives in the same province as she does, and has, if anything, this is as close to somebody who can be a kindred spirit to, what Cassidy is. Cassidy is a musician. Klace is a musician. Klace is a content creator who likes, music. They both live in Canada, right? And they both apparently are, people who are not white, right? They are considered minorities, right? And so basically that's where this second thing sort of stemmed from, and this is where things kind of accelerated from here. Basically, Cassidy, so it's kind of in reverse order here. The one at the bottom here is sort of Klace's response to Cassidy, because Cassidy was getting very defensive because Klace was now, starting to say, things against her. And unbeknownst to the internet and myself, they're apparently roommates, but Cassidy was trying to spin her thread on the internet and in her defense. So what she said was, but it figures Klace, the rich white boy, her words, would more publicly defend JT Wusky's content than ever take a second to think critically about what a POC, person of color, girl is trying to convey, albeit in a messy way. This has always been the way of the fandom, and why I must forge my own path forward. So basically, Cassidy is indicating that she sort of seems to want to break up with Klace in this instance, utilizing the concept that he is a wealthy, affluent white boy, her words. But Klace's response with basically indicating that that's absolutely not true. It's like, I want everyone to understand how awful this is. Cassidy knows I'm not white. I'm biracial, and erasing my indigenous identity is repulsive. It's not, haha, how could she be so stupid. Klace is not white. It's that she knows my race and refuses to acknowledge me as being Métis, which is an indigenous Canadian. So basically, but he mentions in another thing, in an earlier tweet, that they live together. And on top of, like, so you can see where Cassidy might be like, oh, well, he's affluent because he, like, basically owns this house that I've decided to room with him in. And so basically, she might be concerned about her future and stuff like that, and that sort of like, and she's trying to spin a thread in order to try to get the internet's favor, right? And the reality is that the internet is not a homogenous mind, and yes, a handful of people are always going to agree with somebody, even if they're not the greatest person. I mean, heck, even Hitler has fans still, apparently. I don't know how, but it's just a reality. Everybody in the world is going to have people who hate them and people who love them. It's just you can't satisfy everyone, and trying to fight the internet to try to earn its favor just usually doesn't work. Especially when you bring up race and you try to portray somebody as, the negativity of that race. Just never a good idea in any kind of argument or any kind of defense or anything like that, because it really puts a lot of egg on your face. And here we have Klace, Cassidy sort of coming, taking it back and say, I didn't know you weren't white. That's certainly my bad. Not that like you ever acknowledge it anywhere up until now, as far as I've seen. So, like, basically, in Klace is going, Cassidy, you have eyes. I'm not white. Stop. So the reality is that race is sort of a personal thing, and you really shouldn't expect somebody to bring up who they are or to fight for who they are in every conversation. It's same with sexuality, right? It really is up to the individual if they want to portray their sexuality in a more open manner, or portray their racial makeup in a more open manner. Right? People can be pretty open or closed about that kind of thing. And it's really not a great idea to force that kind of thing out into the open like that. So that being said, obviously this back and forth escalated things to the point where Klace was getting really frustrated, to the point where he decided to follow through with what Cassidy was basically saying, that they're no longer going to work with them. So this is where the tide started to flow into the thing that ended up having the Ursa Majors thing removed. Klace posted a tweet indicating his intent to basically break any sort of camaraderie with Cassidy in content creation, and also to basically remove any items that they've worked on together, which basically is the triple threat songs that they had created together for Bandcamp, and was an Ursa Major nomination, along with two of Cassidy's singles, right? So there was Triple Threat, and there was two Cassidy singles. There was Mary E. Lloyd's music thing that we talked about in last week's Thursday episode, which this ended up happening before that was released. So it was kind of rather interesting that once again I pre-record something and things change over time. So basically here we have him saying that Klace states that the severance of my business partner with Cassidy Civet goes down to a fundamental level of my company. Here are my pledges moving forward. I offer no support to her platform in any way. All I can do is humbly ask for you to consider checking out Komorebe Komorebi. I don't know how to pronounce that. Forgive me. On Steam to help me. So Komorebi is a game. It was Ursa nominated, but that one, as you'll see, has also been removed from the Ursa Majors. Basically, it's Klace's third visual novel after Major Minor and Winds of Change. By the way, next time voting comes around, you can vote for me to stream it if you would wish. But basically, here's the threat. Here's the threat. Here's the statement that he makes about his changes based on this situation that had happened. Triple Threat will be pulled from Bandcamp. Triple Threat will be removed from all streaming services. I asked that the Ursa Major Awards withdraw Triple Threat from considerations from Best Anthropomorphic Music. Rather than physical copies of Triple Threat, my special Kickstarter backers will receive a physical copy of Komorebi OS original soundtrack. If the Klace music project continues, it'll be with a new team. Less loss of revenue on Triple Threat will result in a loss of royalties currently being given to Cassidy. This is damaging to my studio, but I can't offer this product any longer knowing the actions and viewpoints of Cassidy. I humbly request that you consider checking out Komorebi on Steam if you support this initiative and want to consider helping out my studio as this structural change occurs. Thank you, everyone, for your understanding this decision. So, basically, the band broke up. But of course, given that Cassidy had 2 other nominations in the music category, and obviously this was becoming, it's not even just between Klace and Cassidy, even though most of my conversations discuss that. There's clearly a bunch of other things happening as well at the same time, where, you know, a lot of Klace's fans are seeing what's going on and are very frustrated with Cassidy, and Cassidy's also trying to, you know, rally her fans in this sort of social media conflict, as it were. And because of that, there were Klace and his followers were trying to push to have Cassidy, punished for her behavior on not only invoking a furry founder in what they see as a disrespectful way, but also disrespecting Klace's racial makeup, right? And her disrespect in that regard. So, he basically was, when his fans stated their frustration, he would retweet a lot of these situations and things like that, while Cassidy herself would post certain things about, trying to rally things in order to get herself restored back to Vancouver once they made the decision to remove her thing. But as Sotalk would show here, who is a computer science person who we've talked about before on this channel on another video, he does nonfiction work. He noted that the Cassidy tweet here that had a lot of likes on it seemed to have a lot of bots liking the tweet, where Cassidy was saying, well, not the first time bullies who don't attend a convention end up winning. Not even the first time safety is used as an excuse. Must be a Canadian thing. Thanks, Furry Equinox. So local supporters, now is your time to shine since you actually attend. Tell Vancouver you want my events back. So, and now interestingly, so basically, she returned fire basically in this regard. But of course, the issue is that, as I said, patterns are a thing. She was removed from Furry Equinox, or Furry Equinox wouldn't work with her on these kind of things. Indie FurCon, Defroctor, and wouldn't work with her on these kind of things. I believe Anthro Northeast as well. There's been a handful of conventions who have decided not to work with Cassidy. Obviously, they don't usually explicitly say why, but you hear the rumors and stuff like that. But I'm not a rumor kind of person. But eventually, I think this is sort of a little bit different in that this is a fellow musician, a fellow, non-white Canadian, who, basically has like similar backstories to this. So if anyone was going to give Cassidy a chance, and he did because he brought her onto a team, it was him, right? It was Klace. Klace was her opportunity to work together with somebody in order to get this thing done, and she burnt yet another bridge because of her fear, and because of her desperation for that stage. And desperation, ladies and gentlemen, as I've grown older, have learned is the root of all evil. Being desperate for a success, like building a narrative up for yourself, and being desperate to achieve what you've previously achieved, and doing anything you can to do it. I think Cassidy, unfortunately, has found herself in a position where she succeeded very, very strongly by getting on Eurovision. And because that was sort of her kind of starting point, like that she was able to somehow get her way onto Eurovision through contacting people, getting a person who knew a person who knew a person, and getting actually allowed to, represent during Eurovision, right? That's not a small potatoes. That's kind of a big deal. But the problem is sometimes if you're successful to that degree to start with, then the bar is all the way up here, yet you hadn't taken the time to create that foundation to work your way up there again. So basically you try to push yourself so hard that you end up burning, yourself out just because you can't hit that high again. It's like, in the same thing happens in the financial world. Like if somebody makes a guess as to a stock price going up or down, and they make a really good guess, and they make a crud ton of money off of one YOLO play on throwing their money on something and it wins, or like a casino too. Like if you throw all your money on red and it wins, like, ooh, you're on a hot, you're feeling hot, like you're feeling like you're gonna win again. So you're gonna take another risk, and that risk will end up turning on you eventually. So to me, slow and steady and consistency is more important if you're going to be a content creator. And make the kind of content you want others to experience, even if you don't get as much recognition for it, right? Whether I have one view or whatever, how many views, I would make this kind of content anyway to inform people and talk about, current events and things like that. I don't need to feel like I need to buy bot farms in order to like a tweet or, to try and do things. She had a fan account as well called Cassidy's Number One Fan. And even this fallout from this particular thing caused it so that fan account turned into a rival account, right? Even her number one fan account became basically sort of a tell-all, sort of like, it basically became a number one enemy account, right? So her behaviors, unfortunately, have really done her in this time, and it's important that done. Now, as a finale, Klace eventually got Cassidy removed from performing at Vancouver, but he also was able to get his thing removed from the Ursa Majors. The Ursa Majors probably got a lot of other emails from a lot of other furries who really didn't want Cassidy being representative or honored as a nominee for the Ursa Majors because of her tweets about basically about the founder there and of Klace's race. Basically, now Ursas were basically they responded. Now, here's the thing about Ursa Major Awards: they're run by people who really don't like people trying to invoke things or trying to utilize. they like democracy. They just don't like yelling. I guess. I don't know. They're very much like, don't touch the system. The system works. Don't touch the system. And I kind of I disagree. But I'll cover that in a future video and a future concept, because as I said on Twitter, change is coming. Be wary. Ursa Major Awards said, because the music category has been irreparably compromised due to relentless infighting and refusal to allow impartial and unbiased management of the nominees and voting, the category has been removed from consideration, or from contention. I think they meant consideration this year. And Klace has obviously retweeted that, said, thank you. I'd like to request politely and once more that you please remove Kanarobi from consideration in the game category. It is my intellectual property and I don't want my name associated with your awards. I'm sorry. And their response, done. So obviously Klace definitely went on a like on a stint. As soon as Cassidy made that tweet about his alleged affluence and alleged whiteness, I saw the thing as it was going on, and basically he has a mastery of social media that I have rarely seen in anybody. Very well done, honestly. But he was also firm and fair, and I think that's the biggest difference. Because Cassidy is going to say, well, I was a victim here of this sort of manipulation that Klace was using on social media. But at the same time, Klace is very firm and fair. He did, put pressure on Vancouver to basically deplatform Cassidy once she had basically slighted him as a person in a very racially insensitive way. And when he did that, the convention was grumbly, just as grumbly as Ursa Majors were, but there was sort of a back and forth there too. But I won't go into detail with that because that one eventually got resolved, right? Klace would not let them get away with the way they responded and the tone in which they responded, and eventually they talked to each other, off the internet, and basically came together. He is a local, so it's interesting when she posted that tweet saying these people these non-bullies who never go to this convention are trying to get me removed from the platform. But Klace was working directly with the convention, and he is absolutely a local, and he went to that convention, after this whole thing went, even though there was almost sour grapes there between them on the conversations on the internet, because he was heated because of the situation that he was put in, but he was able to capitulate and understand. It's like, okay, well, we Vancouver isn't really the enemy here. They weren't the person that had disrespected me in this way. That's Cassidy. They've done their part to try to remove that kind of disrespect from their platform, so I should work with them. And eventually, even if I didn't kind of appreciate the tone that they used, in order to, in their response, right, bygones be bygones, because at the end of the day, we both want a successful running convention. We both want a successful fandom. We both want a place for the fans to, appreciate decent and content creators of good character. And at the end of the day, I think Cassie is probably a little bit jealous about the way Klace handled social media, because I think she tries in ways to use that social media in that same sort of way in certain ways. But she's not great at it. I am not either. Klace certainly, a lot of lessons can be learned about the firmness and fairness. So, as a final assignment, if you want to, an interesting video came up where I'm thinking about what this kind of is and how this sort of thing operates when it comes to interpersonal relations, and how people end up successful or not successful. And that's called game theory, because game theory did its final episode and they did it on game theory. And so there's MatPat's video. So you probably have already seen it. If you're watching this weird, obscure person on the internet, you've probably seen MatPat's finale video talking about game theory. And this is sort of where I think this is why Klace ultimately is going to find success. And I think he'll find continued success in the fandom, is because he's willing to stand up for what he believes, but he's not going to burn bridges simply because like things don't exactly align, right? He's willing to compromise. He's willing to, if somebody works with him, he's willing to work back. He's willing to let bygones be bygones, even if things get contentious. Where, as his former compatriot, I don't think she's capable of that currently. She burns bridges. She gets frustrated. I followed her like after she was like talking on Flare for a little bit as an appreciation. During this whole situation, I did decide to eventually unfollow her, and she immediately unfollowed myself. So to me, that sort of sets the tone of like, you're here for yourself. You're not here for others. And you're not going to get far in life if that's your mode operandi, right? But as it is said, as I said, not usually my kind of fare of an interpersonal dispute. When the dust settled and the smoke cleared, things have changed. The music has died on Ursa Majors, so you won't be able to vote on that category. But be sure, if you can, to vote on other categories. Unless Ursa Majors' response put a bad thing on your tongue, then obviously you can just skip it. As I said, future videos to come on that. But anyways, thank you very much for watching today. Kick that like, kick the subscribe button, kick a comment in the comment section, and have a good night. And we'll see you again next time.